Four Boys Garage back. Today we're gonna work on the zero turn. We got some PTO problems. Very quickly, what we had going on is we would pull the PTO switch and we would get nothing. The PTO would not engage, so we had no blades, couldn't mow, and we thought we had a bad PTO. Now there were times that you could pull and release the PTO, and occasionally you'd get it to kick in and you'd work and you could mow as long as you wanted. Just don't turn off the blades. So we thought we had a bad PTO, maybe the coil was shot and needed replaced, and started to dig into it a little bit. And then the process of that actually damaged the pulley here. It got a little out of shape, and turns out that wasn't the problem anyway. Digging a little deeper, we got the multimeter involved and confirmed that every time we hit the switch, and you can do this on your mower, it doesn't matter what brand. This is a Cub Cadet tank. It's commercial 60-inch, but this should apply to about any PTO on any machine. Some of them might defer on your safety switches and things with the seat and whatnot, but on ours, we can actually turn the key to the on position. You don't need to crank. And we can pull the PTO, and then you can get down here and you can plug your multimeter into the harness, and I guess get your probes on. Their PTOs are 2 conductors, so figure out which one's ground, which one's positive, and you should get at least 12.5, 13 volts. You really don't want to be more than 14, 14.2, something like that. In a lot of cases, that can damage your PTO, but it takes a certain amount of voltage to activate, and you certainly don't have too much voltage, or you might have a regulator problem on your machine. So we discovered that we did have power, and consistently had power from the PTO switch, meaning that the switch was fine, the wiring was fine. What we had going on was isolated to the clutch, and that's, I guess, the main reason that we thought we needed to replace it. But then upon reading, I discovered that a symptom that was very clear and decisive with our situation was if you ran for too long. So while it was cold, we could turn the blades on and off, no problem. But once it got pretty hot, they no longer would respond. And I discovered that it actually was just a clearance problem. And on these PTOs, usually these split PTOs like this, there's, on the other half, there's a stud coming down, but you can adjust the clearance to between the friction plates, and there's a tolerance for different models of clutch, obviously. And ours was just out of spec, and we were able to adjust it, and it would work like a dream. But unfortunately, we had already damaged this. And that leads us to the purpose of this video, is that we're replacing ours. So that's a little bit of troubleshooting info, and now we're gonna go into a little bit more of some details on this that we discovered during this process. All these PTO clutches are not created the same. And this is a good example here. The new one has a massive bearing, and this is not OE. This is, I think this was called HD Clutch on Amazon. It was quite a bit more affordable than the factory OE option, but I liked that they were using a huge bearing. I like that they made the bearing replaceable with a snap ring. Now, the old one, you would be able to replace the bearing. If you wanted, you could get it out and get a new bearing for that, but you couldn't replace the pulley, which is why we're replacing the entire thing now. On this unit, it's not a stamped pulley. These are billets, so these pulleys are machined. So they're a lot stronger, thicker, and probably spin quite a bit more true, but more importantly, won't get out of shape as easily. And the pulley is also replaceable. So you can replace this pulley and you can replace this bearing. But what I like is that the bearing is huge in comparison. And they call it a big bearing PTO clutch. So hopefully this thing will hold up a lot better, and we're gonna get back to the replacement. So to summarize, if you turn on your key, which I don't want to leave it on, but if you turn this on and you pull your PTO switch and you have power down there, you either need to adjust, look up the spec, and you'll need feeler gauges, and you can adjust your existing clutch. If you get to within spec and it's still not kicking on, you probably need a clutch. If you turn it on and you don't have power down here, you're gonna need to start looking for a broken wire, or you possibly need a new switch. But I would bet more likely on the broken wire. And there's a lot of models, Husqvarna's, Bobcats, probably Exmarks too, that have a replaceable harness that has 2 plugs. It's only about 6 inches long, maybe 8 inches long, a link with a plug at each end, because they die. And if you test both ends of that lead, you can put your multimeter on resistance mode and check each prong of each end of that wire to test the wire. We had one on the Bobcat mower that there was no continuity. The wire actually was broken, and you could wiggle the wire and you could get continuity. And that part, I think, was like 10 or 15 bucks. Plugged in the new link and we were back in business.
All right, so this PTO is kind of set up in 2 pieces. Let's split PTO. So what you want to do is you want to take, there's 3 nuts. There's 3 of these studs. The other one's over here. You can't really see it. Can't really get my camera up in there to show you either. But you want to take these off, which I'm going to do really quick, and then we'll get to the next part. All right, so once you get those 3 nuts off and the springs, you'll end up with this guy and some springs, nuts. The next step is going to be taking the pulley off. So you just got to take out the main bolt here. Then there's also a snap ring up here holding the bearing in. I think you can replace the bearing in this pulley, but in my case, we're going to just replace the whole PTO clutch, because I've adjusted this in the past, clearance for between the friction material and the actual magnet itself. It's just stuck on there now. I can't adjust it anymore, but I also have a bent pulley, so I'm not going to worry about replacing the bearing. I'm just going to replace the whole assembly. So I'll go ahead and take this piece off and we'll go from there. All right, got the pulley removed. Now it's time to focus on this guy. So I think what you need to take this off is going to be just a 3-jaw puller. You can go up and pull this right off the crankshaft. Don't think there's anything else holding it in, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a crack and we'll see what happens. All right, it's coming off. All right, so I got this thing almost all the way off, but I made a discovery. So the puller that I'm using is pretty big, and when I got all the way to here, and then the puller was actually touching this crossbar. So I'm going to attempt to figure out another way to get this thing off. I mean, it's almost there. I don't know if I can get enough. Yeah, you can see the crankshaft there, real close. Just not quite there yet. All right, got it off. All right, so what I did is I took my 3-jaw puller, which has a extra spot on this side in order to kind of turn it into a 2-jaw. So I turned it into the 2-jaw and I actually flipped the hooks. So these were in this hole when I first started. So I put them in this, and I was able to kind of go parallel with that cross member there to get it off, and it worked like a charm. All right, I got the crankshaft all cleaned up with the Scotch-Brite. I'm gonna put a layer of anti-seize on it, try to help me slide that new one on. But get that done and start putting the new one on, get it all reassembled and give it a test.
All right, new clutch in, and we're able to use a board and actually push off of this cross member here a little bit to get it slid up on the crank. Cleaned off the crank real good with a Scotch-Brite. Put a little anti-seize on there to hopefully ensure that thing wants to slide back down easily in the future for the next guy. Might be us. Also wanted to point out that this clutch has a replaceable wiring harness too. So I might go ahead and get one of those now, just to have in the future if it's inexpensive enough, but looks good on here. We went ahead and turned on the key, tested it, and it's engaging, so should be good to go. 4 boys out.